Joining us now is the German ambassador to the UK, Miguel Berger. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. It's been a bumpy few months for the UK, shall we say, partly because of global factors like inflation, partly because of domestic issues as well. How do you think the UK is currently perceived from abroad?
Yeah, I would say that everybody is glad to see that financial markets are now again more stable. But the challenges you have described, we are all facing them. High inflation, energy prices going up, governments struggling to get the necessary support for business and private households. So I would say there is also quite some understanding for the challenges.
Yeah, those challenges, as you say, experienced by countries across Europe, the rest of the world as well. What do you see as the way forward for that?
I think we have to be aware that this energy crisis will not go away after winter because we will have zero Russian gas in Europe, and Russia has been by far the largest supplier. That means that not only Germany, the whole of Europe, UK, will have to get gas from the international markets. And that means for the next 1.5 to 2 years, we might face a situation with high energy prices.
Let's talk a bit about Ukraine. Shall we? Because I think the German Chancellor spoke to Vladimir Putin this week on the phone. He urged him to withdraw troops and to try and find a diplomatic solution. Is Germany optimistic about a way out of the war?
We are not yet optimistic. We don't see a fundamental change in the Russian position. Putin continues this really terrorizing the civilian population, and we are very concerned about that, because these attacks on the energy infrastructure mean that many people with freezing temperatures might be forced to leave Ukraine. So we expect another wave of refugees in the coming weeks. But to your question, no, we don't see for the foreseeable future a willingness to engage in a diplomatic solution.
In the conversation, Olaf Scholz also vowed to continue German support for Ukraine. There has been some criticism, hasn't there, that Germany was a bit slow off the mark in offering support to Ukraine. Perhaps you could have done a little bit more, as some would say, in terms of military support as well. I think we can show that the different amounts that countries have spent on weapons and equipment to Ukraine. It's the numbers just on the left there. You can see the US at the top, followed by the EU. But both Poland and the UK above Germany, despite having smaller populations. Should Germany do more?
Yeah. I think these figures are not correct because we have sent many weapon systems which were written off. So, for example, the anti-aerial Gepard tanks, which were already been written off. So we can't have them in this statistic as new tanks. So I would not give too much on it. But my feeling is that we started a little bit later than others. But in the end, if you look at the amount of weapon systems, especially IRIS-T anti-aerial missiles, they are extremely effective. 100% of Russian missiles attacking Kiev, the last raid, were shot down. So I would say we are doing all quite well.
And I guess there's been action on energy as well in the EU too, where there is obviously more of a dependence on Russian oil and gas.
Yeah, but this has been dramatically reduced. But let me say on weapons, I think the key issue is that we continue to send weapons and ammunition and assure maintenance of the equipment we have sent over the coming months. Only if that happens, Russia will understand that they will not really be able to defeat Ukraine. So this is, I think, the key challenge for all of us.
Before we move on to Brexit, which I do want to do, I just want to ask you a question on China, because we've seen some really extraordinary protests in China recently, originally about the lockdown, but also spilling over to other issues as well. Chancellor Scholz announced recently that Germany is going to try and reduce its dependence on trade with China. That will be quite difficult to do, though, won't it?
It's a challenge for all of us. And I think the key issue is that we have to diversify our trade relations. So we have to look at our weaknesses. The weaknesses like, for example, semiconductors, batteries, rare earths. So we have to invest in Western production, try to reshore certain industries. But let me say that we are working in Germany on a new China strategy. And we are cooperating very closely with the British government, which is doing the update of the integrated review. So I would say we are analysing together the challenges of China.
It's interesting that the UK and Germany you see as perhaps working together to get a new sort of strategy on this then.
Yes, and we have to do that. I think if there is one lesson of Russia's war of aggression, is that we have to reduce dependencies from China.
Now, There's been lots of speculation in the UK about Rishi Sunak's approach to Brexit. Are you optimistic that there could be some kind of breakthrough in the disagreement about the Northern Ireland Protocol?
I think that we have now a different basis for negotiations. I see an openness to engage. There have already been talks. And yes, I would say I'm cautiously optimistic because in the end, there is a landing zone for the Northern Ireland Protocol's implementation. It is possible to find a solution. The difficult issue is more the political, on the reaction of the DUP, the risk of an election in Northern Ireland. So there are many political issues which go together with it. But if we speak about the negotiation process, I would say I'm cautiously optimistic.
That's interesting. Do you think then that Rishi Sunak has a different attitude, a different set of priorities perhaps to Liz Truss and perhaps also Boris Johnson?
Yeah, I would say that even Liz Truss made some steps towards Europe. She participated in Prague at the first meeting of the European Political Community. And the first talks were already under Liz Truss with James Cleverly. So I would say we see in general a different attitude. Maybe it has also to do with the war in Ukraine, that everybody understands that in the West we have more important challenges to face and that democracies should work together and should be able to sort out an issue like Northern Ireland.
With the, you talked about the threat from Ukraine and Russia, but also, obviously, we are facing an economic crisis as well, right, with energy bills. Given that, do you think that there is a desire, both from the EU side, but also from the British side, I guess, to have a closer relationship?
I would say yes, and it has always been the position of the German government that we want a relationship as close as possible with the United Kingdom. And yes, you mentioned energy. This is a perfect example. If we look at the challenges, electricity supply for the UK in winter, a lot of LNG went through the UK to Germany, to the center of Europe. So energy is a perfect example of an area where we should cooperate to mutual advantage.
There's been speculation about a so-called Swiss deal, which effectively means access to the single market, but it would come with greater contributions to the EU budget and also more immigration from Europe as well. Now, officially, the UK government has ruled it out, but I guess what I'm interested in is, would that even be a possibility? Would it even be something that would be on the table from the European side?
I would say that we welcome that there is a discussion about this kind. We don't have to go into the details of the Swiss model, but that the government or parts of the government are thinking about how to have a better and closer relationship with the European Union is something that we see very positively.
What is your take on the opposition's perspective on this? It feels that Keir Starmer is perhaps reluctant to talk too much about Brexit. He, of course, was a very strong Remainer. Would you like to see a stronger line from Labour?
I think that's really the decision that Labour has to take. But we see also very positively that Labour is willing to have a very close relationship with Europe. And I think the rest we will have to leave it now to the negotiations, because if we achieve a solution on Northern Ireland, then this will help also to develop other areas of cooperation. So I would see the solution of the Northern Ireland Protocol question as a first step, and there will be others then to follow.
There's a lot of talk about an independent Scotland here in the UK as well. If Scotland was to vote for independence, would they have to adopt the euro to join the EU?
I don't really want to get into an internal question, but let me put it like that. Every country that is joining the European Union, and we are currently negotiating with some countries in the Western Balkans, know that they have to introduce the euro.
Interesting. And then just finally, could you see a position in the future where the UK joins the single market?
Very difficult to predict. I would say let's take it step by step. But in Germany, obviously, there is a lot of interest in having, as I said, the United Kingdom as close as possible to Europe and to Germany.
Thank you. Now, I'm sorry to bring this up, but the World Cup is, of course, still going on. Germany are out, thanks to a winning goal from Japan against Spain that knocked you out. And there was a pretty controversial VAR decision in the lead up to that goal, that it was ruled that this ball didn't go out of play. Do you agree, just looking at this picture, that the ball didn't cross the line?
Yeah, it seems that the ball was in maybe 3-4 millimeters. But, you know, in the end, this doesn't matter because Germany should never have lost the first match against Japan. So let me only say really good luck for the English team tonight against Senegal.
Oh, there you go. You're going to be supporting England against Senegal then?
Yeah, it will be an interesting match to watch.
And just finally, I just want to show you this picture of the German team because they were certainly a team who tried to make their voices heard in Qatar, covering their mouths there to send a very clear message that they weren't allowed to, I guess, show their disagreements with some of the Qataris' positions on human rights. Were you proud of the German team for doing this, and would you have liked to see more coordinated action from European teams on this? Yeah,
let me say I was really proud of seeing them because it was a very controversial discussion about the World Cup in Qatar, as it was in the United Kingdom, and especially this very appalling interview by the head of FIFA, Mr. Infantino. So I think if there is one conclusion out of that, is that we should only have these big sporting events in countries which respect workers' rights and respect basic human rights.
That's interesting to hear you say that so firmly. I think many people would agree with that analysis as well. Thank you so much for being on the programme this morning. Good to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you.